Hey folks, this is Kelani. We're getting quite a lot of content in patch 8.2 when you break it down, 2 new zones and 2 major PvE adventures shortly after the patch goes live, 2 to 3 weeks after the floodgates open and we're allowed to romp around Nazjatar and Mechagon. The new raid will become available, which is one of the most exciting things you can look forward to in World of Warcraft these days. The raids never seem to disappoint, but there's one more huge feature in patch 8.2 to look forward to, the second mega dungeon in World of Warcraft. Operation Mechagon will open alongside the Eternal Palace raid and will have 8 bosses to chomp through. The mega dungeon has been made available on the PTR, so we have our first look at how the dungeon unfolds, the different areas we'll be exploring and how all of the bosses play out. So let's have a look. To my surprise, the dungeon actually starts outside in the Mechagon zone that we explore, and it uses up a huge chunk of it. 4 bosses are in this area, so when they split the dungeon later on, we'll have one section be just the bosses on the island, and then the other section will be the 4 bosses inside the Mechagon city. Each boss is in their own major area. The first one is in the Trog slums, so you need to fight your way past a lot of thrown together scrap and mobs that are using everything they steal in entirely the wrong way. You'll also have to work your way through Bondo's yard, and while Bondo doesn't seem to be home, there are a pair of Junkanomes here that don't seem too friendly. They even try and run you over. Another boss can be found down by the Overflow, so naturally it's going to be some nasty, gunky elemental type thing. That area is quite dirty in general. And then the 4th boss is up near the depot. The interesting thing about the 4th boss is that it actually patrols around the entire area, and it's not made entirely clear what gets that boss to move on, but it looked like we couldn't kill the bosses in Bondo's yard before we killed the Trog boss, unless we wanted to deal with the aerial unit constantly spamming stun bots at our location. Those are super annoying, and we had them throughout the entire 3rd boss fight, but maybe we just did something wrong. So that aerial unit, that 4th boss, kind of controls how you can play this first area of the dungeon. When you kill 3 bosses, the aerial unit will fly off to the depot and you'll have to take it down over there in a really fun encounter, which requires you to kill a few mobs and get through a little maze to power down some generator things, but we'll talk more specifically about bosses later on. After you take down the first 4 bosses, you can enter the Mechagon city proper, or at least parts of it. This is where most of the excitement came from in the dungeon for me personally, because the first bosses are, as I said before, set up on the islands that we'll be exploring a lot anyway, so that's not really anything too new. But when you get down here, everything changes. The first thing you're going to see is the Robodrome, which I think is actually been introduced as a new arena map, so that's really cool. As for the dungeon, well, I hope you know how to play Battlebots. You'll be facing off against 2 different machines in the entire arena at the same time. Swords and blades pop out from all over the place, there are hammers around the edge of the arena that will destroy you if you get caught by them, and the 2 bosses are constantly trying to make sure you don't get past this little section of Mechagon. Anyone who can best the Battlebots arena will earn themselves a one-way ticket to the trash heap. Probably not the reward a lot of you were hoping for, but this is Mechagon. Anyone made up of more than 20% flesh has to get thrown in the garbage. It's in the rules. This kind of reminds me of the Robots movie, down below the city where all of the trash goes to be melted down and recycled. The whole better than you shiny robot kind of thing applies as well, but anyway, welcome to the Underjunk. This entire area is made up of rejected bits and bobs, so I wouldn't hope to find anything particularly useful if I were you, and as with most good places that you're not supposed to be breaking into, Mechagon City has a guard dog. You'll need to make it past Cujo if you want to see the bright lights of the fabulous city of Mechagon. After a bit of a journey upwards, past some conveyor belts which are going to be hilarious when this dungeon is opened up for Mythic Plus and is on a timer, and through some sewerways, because the sewers always have to be involved when we're breaking into a city, obviously, you can finally see what all the commotion is about. Mechagon City. It's a bit smoggy, if you ask me, though I guess for a race that is literally trying to remove as much flesh and biomatter from their person as possible, a bit of air pollution probably isn't the most pressing issue right now, especially with us invading them and everything. You only get a little bit of time in the streets of Mechagon, and personally I am a bit disappointed about that, but what we do get to see is pretty cool. There's a little gauntlet where you have to fight off waves of enemies, and then there's a maze of security robots you have to get through as well. This wasn't all too bad, it just ate up a little bit of time which the Mythic Plus Dungeoneers in this group were complaining about. When you figured out the pattern of the robots, it was fairly easy to just slip through, or fly over them if you're a demon hunter. I guess that's going to be a thing. Getting to the next boss is pretty fun though. The Machinist's garden was a fancy area with lots of hidden gizmos and gadgets. Flamethrowers would pop out of the middle statue thing and burn the entire area. Plants will spit at you from the corners of the room, and cogs will start flying everywhere. This was a fun fight and a cool area to boot. After that, we're headed up to the last boss, so we're not down here for all too long in the grand scheme of things. There's a flight up to the last boss's area, which is awesome and gives you a sense that there really is a large city under this hill, and who knows how deep it actually goes. But with that in mind, I can't help but feel like we only really get to scratch at the tip of the iceberg here. We have a very set path, a very short set path at that, but everything that we're told about Mechagon and what we can briefly see as we fly over is that there is quite a bit more. This is supposed to be a large civilization hidden away from the world, but we just don't get to see any of it. We pop up to the king, take his crown, and call it a day. I think what worked so well about Suramar back in Legion was the fact that we got to explore a proper city. We were working with insiders, skulking around in the shadows, trying not to get caught, and when the time came we laid siege to the entire place and broke down the doors of the Night Hall to get at their leader. We don't even get to see the city of Mechagon outside of this dungeon, and even then only 2 of the 8 bosses are in the city proper. I think they've done a great job with the zones and the areas of the dungeon as a whole, and the junk pit down at the bottom is actually one of my favourite parts of this whole adventure, but I can't help but feel like the city hasn't really been given a good showing. Maybe we'll get to see more of it in the future as we help the Mechagnomes retake their lost home, but we'll have to wait and see. Maybe it could be part of the Mechagnome allied race introduction quests, because let's be honest, we all know the next allied races are Vulpera and Mechagnomes, so there's a high chance we'll get to see this city again. I just hope we get to see a bit more of it than what we have access to so far. Obviously, if you want to explore things at your own pace, the easiest way to do that is to clear through the dungeon with a group on the public test realms. It's not all too difficult and shouldn't take more than a couple of hours if your group has never seen it before. I think the city areas look great, even if we don't get to spend too much time in those environments, but I am a little disappointed that half the dungeon takes place outside in the Mechagon zone. Right now we also have no real clue who most of the bosses out there are, besides the aerial unit who plays a significant part in the Mechagon story. We are missing story elements right now though, so hopefully each of those bosses is introduced appropriately and built up to actually mean something by the time the dungeon opens. If they aren't introduced or aren't built up at all, then they're just random bosses that don't mean anything in the grand scheme of things, which feels like bosses padding out the dungeon journal to create this mega dungeon with a small actual dungeon inside. Besides those grievances, I had a lot of fun going through the dungeon for the first time. I think a lot of players will enjoy it for sure. There's a variety of environments you get to work your way through. None of it is too difficult from my point of view. The bosses are very different and the entire place has a good sense of story and progression. For those of you who are curious, let's walk through the bosses real quick. The first boss that we have is King Gobbermac. This chap is fairly easy. He'll do an AoE ability which a healer will have to watch out for to make sure everyone stays healthy. He'll call on a whole bunch of ads to help him in the fight, and he'll use a charged smash attack. Those ads are amazingly fun to AoE down, but the most efficient way to kill this boss is to split that charged smash amongst your party, and then take the resulting electrical charge to the various pieces of stolen tech around the boss. Some of those pylon looking things will power up and incinerate any Trog ads that come your way. Keep the defenses powered up and the ads just won't bother you at all. The second boss that we did is Trixie and Nano. These chaps were really fun. They're in Bondo's yard. One of them will try to tase your group members constantly, while the other tries to run you over with his mecha cycle. Seriously, getting run over hurts. It's almost a one-shot for most players, so dodge the bike wheel thing when you can. There's also smoke clouds that come from the bike that you will need to use to break line of sight when you're targeted by a super taser ability, so dodge the bike and nuke the bosses. This one wasn't too bad. The third boss we went to was Gunker. And we might have done this wrong, because the aerial unit was hovering overhead the entire time. Any area that is being patrolled by the aerial unit will get spammed with stun bots whenever you're nearby. These are a pretty huge pain in the rear, and work more or less exactly like the Mechatalk bots, except they also explode. Not super ideal, but with Gunker you have to kill the large sludge ads to free a squirt bot. 3 squirt bots are needed to actually summon the boss. This one was kind of difficult with the constant stun bots. You have to dodge all of the sludgy slime stuff on the floor, otherwise otherwise you'll get stunned and stuck, and the boss will throw out more and more of this stuff as the fight goes on. The squirt bots will cleanse it away, so just stay close to them and you'll be fine. The ranged members out there will definitely get the short stick on this fight. After all 3 other bosses are dead, the aerial unit will head on over to the depot. This fight changes between killing ads and running the mazes. Just kill the tank buster ad as quickly as you can, and be careful. It's called a tank buster for a reason. That thing hurts. When it's dead, one of the power coils should become empowered. You need to head up to the coil and start draining it of energy. The electric grid areas will stun you, the bots will teleport you back to the start, and there's a few other things to dodge. So edge your way around everything, get to the pylon and start draining it. You can see it has an energy bar that gets depleted as you channel it, so one person could do this alone, but it's going to take much longer, so try to get as many people up there as quickly as you can. When the pylon has been drained, the aerial unit falls from the sky and takes a huge amount of increased damage, so get down there and nuke its balls off. After the first time you'll be stuck in a blue circle and have to dodge a lot of hard-hitting AoE effects. Just dodge them and it shouldn't be too bad. You need to kill the ads again to open up the other pylon and run the maze, then finish off the boss. The Battlebots boss down in the Robodrome is actually really easy. The tank needs to take the humanoid bot, the Platinum Pummeler I believe, around the edge of the room and make it get hit by hammers 3 times to break all of its armor plating off. The little flame engine thing needs to get nuked down because it's just running interference and can't be tanked. Just try to avoid its ramming abilities and its flames. You also need to dodge the swords and stuff that pop out of the ground, but staying away from the grooves in the floor seem to deal with that quite nicely, so that might be a little easier than intended. Kill the tank thing first, then finish off the Platinum Pummeler when its armor has been stripped. Down in the junk heap you'll have to face off against Cujo. This one is fairly straightforward as well. He'll deal a lot of damage to your tank and apply a magic debuff which deals damage over time, but when you dispel it your entire party takes damage, so just be aware of that and make sure you've got some healing ready. He'll also drop some large cubes of junk. You'll need to hide behind these whenever he starts casting his large flame vent AoE ability, but each cube only survives for 1 whole round of venting, so you have to hide behind a new cube, otherwise you're probably going to die. The head machinist was actually shockingly easy, as long as you don't get hit by the flamethrowers in the middle and kill off the ads quickly as they appear at the side. I don't really see how you can die in this fight. Nothing else seems to be dangerous, so dodge the fire, kill the ads and DPS the boss down. He does throw out swirly blue bomb things which disorient you if you get hit, so I guess that could be bad if you get hit, but they're super easy to avoid, so if you dodge everything, you should be golden. Now the last boss is a little bit more complicated. Throughout the entire fight you'll have a blue electricity orb thing which constantly relocates to your position. Everyone but the tank will have one of these orbs chasing them, so you need to keep moving periodically and keep dodging that orb. In the first phase, the boss will target a random player with Giga Zap. Just make sure only the targeted player gets hit. He will also take off into the air and start chasing a random player with a cutting beam. Run around if you're targeted, and don't walk into the beam if you're not. That's pretty much it for phase 1. When you kill the aerial unit he's piloting, he'll jump into something just a little bit bigger. He'll still use Giga Zap, so again just make sure only one player gets hit by that, the targeted player. It is quite a large laser at this point though, so be sure to stay spread out just a little bit. The other thing he will do is randomly pull you all to a location in the room. This can make it hard to dodge the laser or your electric ball thing, but overall it's not really too much of a hard fight, as long as you stay away from the dangerous stuff. I don't think many players will have too much difficulty clearing through this dungeon in the first week, so if you're interested in checking it out because you love the environments or the story of the Mechagnomes, or just because you want some of the new cool gear and its special effects, hey, I don't judge. Everyone should be able to take a decent crack at it. But that's Operation Mechagon, the new mega dungeon coming in patch 8.2. What do you think from what you've seen so far? How do you feel about another long 8-boss dungeon which only has a mythic difficulty when it first becomes available? Is there anything else you're curious about relating to Operation Mechagon that I didn't cover in this video? Leave all your thoughts in the comment section below. A big thank you to all of our supporters over on Patreon. You can see their names floating by on screen. If you want to join these lovely guys and gals, you can find a link in the description below. Remember to leave a like just below the video before you leave. If you want to see more, make sure to subscribe. But apart from that, thanks for watching folks, good luck and have fun, and as always I will see you next time.